Susie B Hutch, welcome
Bailey.
to the Risk Junkie podcast.
Thank you.
I'm so excited that you're here.
Me too.
You're helping me start this long-awaited creative journey, and I'm so glad you're here. And I'm so excited to talk about things because I've gotten the privilege to know you, and I think that there's so many nuggets that I've taken from you, and so to be able to dive in and talk about it, I'm just so excited. And also, thank you for the coffee.
You're welcome.
The way to my heart.
We'll always bring a coffee.
It's helpful to understand from which you came to where you are now, because we'll dive deep into some of those pivotal things for you. But you grew up in Texas, so at least that does give enough context for us Dallasites. Am I that now? I don't know.
Yeah, you're a Dallasite for sure. I grew up in Forney, Texas, which is like 20 minutes east. It's east.
See me in my Texas geography.
Down 80 east. So it's like kind of in the country, but like you can't really say it's country now because it's not anymore. Right. But it kind of was when I was there. I don't know. I grew up on an acre, and that seems like a lot for like people who live here. They're like an acre. But I grew up with a mom who was a teacher and a dad who was a football coach and like a feral little sister. Yeah. No, feral siblings, dad's football coaches. And I could never stop talking. That was what I was always in trouble for. Talking since Tuesday. Been talking my whole life. Always wanted to be a writer. Knew that that's what I wanted to do. Tried to send in stories to like the children's magazines and highlights. And I was like, I want to be a famous author, and that's all I want to do. Well, then I watched some Grey's Anatomy in high school.
As we do.
And I was like, I want to be a trauma surgeon.
Just kidding. I found my new calling.
So this
is all too relatable.
Literally, it's so embarrassing when I think about it now. So I'm like, and actually this morning I was looking at my Facebook memories and I saw something that was like from 2009, and it was like, can someone please explain to me why every single answer I got on my chemistry homework is wrong from the answer key? And I'm like, yeah, so why did I decide to go into college and freaking major in biomedical science? Because I watched Grey's Anatomy.
That's so funny.
So I left.
Inspiration hits you.
Yeah, inspiration hit me, and it didn't stick with me for very long. So I really thought I was going to be a surgeon. And then I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done. And I switched.
Is that from a class that you took? You're like, no.
Yeah, it was from like literally the second that I sat down in
the classroom,
chemistry 101.
This vibe isn't.
I was like, this is going to be an absolute no from me. And I was so embarrassed. I was like, why do I think this is going to be like a good thing? I was literally talking to someone the other day about how my like first semester chemistry, I knew that I wanted to change majors.
Yeah.
Like, I knew that I was not going to stick there. You went in with biomedical
science.
Yes.
Where did you go to college?
I went to Texas A&M.
How did we not know this?
I don't know.
We didn't.
I don't know. Maybe we did.
Aaron also went to Texas.
Aaron went to A&M, and we were in the same class, but we didn't graduate. Or we didn't know each other when we were there. But we were
not at all.
No. And A&M was also like quite off-brand for me.
Seemingly so. And I come from a hokey place, so I can be like,
yeah.
But Forney to A&M, no. Where I grew up to A&M, yes. But it's like you don't realize how the Aggies do not come for me. But it's just...
I will never come for you as that. But I don't care.
And I'm only saying this because it's a culture that I am not a part of because I'm not an Aggie. But it's also from the outside. It's very... Not hokey. Maybe hokey.
A little.
Maybe. A little. Don't come for me.
Imagine the culture shock, though. Like, I might have grown up in Forney, but I came to, like, Dallas city limits every single time I
that was not your aspiration.
Was such a city girl, and then moved to freaking College Station, Texas, which is literally in the middle of nowhere. Like,
actually, like, how did that happen?
So I thought my whole life I wanted to go to UT.
Which is
and
fair.
That's like very much my whole childhood. I thought that's where I wanted to go. And then I visited it in high school, and I was like, I actually don't really like this.
Right. You know so much when you show up to a place.
Yeah, I was like, I don't really like this. So it was between like UT or going to SMU, which I'm glad I didn't go there.
Yeah.
A&M or Ole Miss randomly, which also
that is
just,
random.
Like, so weird.
Ole Miss though, just sounds nice.
Yeah, it just sounds like nice and nice.
Got a
and
cool
southern.
logo, it's all cursive and stuff.
But yeah, I just ended up there in College Station as a freaking biomedical sciences major. So please imagine the culture shock in my life. I'm like surrounded by cows
and like people that are doing that. Yeah, right.
People are like, my major's agriculture. And
that's
I'm
so
like,
funny.
What is going on here?
So then you go to A&M. going in, you're like, maybe not. But after did you go for 4 years?
Yeah, but I was only like, I changed majors at the end of my freshman year. I said, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this. So I ended up changing to journalism, which, fun fact, at A&M, like, it had gotten removed from the school. Yeah. They had just brought it back. So the program was tiny, like itty bitty. There were less than 20 of us in there. Wow. And there were only 5 of us from like the class of 2017. Yeah. There were only 5 of us there. So it was like a very intimate, unique way to get an education at a school with 100,000 people.
Yeah, right. Very large.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Timing is everything.
So that's how I started like legitimately falling in love with writing for like a job.
Yeah. Cultivating that.
Yeah.
Because you knew that you wanted to write, and then Grey's Anatomy inspired you. God. Right? Yes. Is that the journey?
And then Grey's Anatomy inspired me to not write. And then I said, never mind, we got to listen to our inner child.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Our inner child just got silenced for a moment.
I know. And my family's like, you're going to change to what? An English major? You're never going to make any money. And I was like, y'all can all be quiet because you're literally in education.
Yeah, I know, right? You're like, okay, well.
Which I did end up doing after that. Yeah. So I can't say anything bad about it.
No, naturally. And also it's just like, we've progressed with such a pivotal time. Like my parents are also teachers. So in my environment was so small that it was like, what else do you know of to do? And then you try to do something, and you kind of have to go on that path in the sense that is maybe what's most available to you. Uh-huh. But then we all, not necessarily surprised, I wouldn't say surprise is the right word. We all give our parents a lot of stress and anxiety because we're like, actually, we're going to do something. This
I'm going to be a lawyer.
Here.
I'm going to be a teacher. Yeah. I'm going to be a journalist. Yeah. My mom and dad
are like, I'm going to be an
entrepreneur. Oh, God. When I was actually, I'm going to quit my job, my parents were like,
oh, yeah.
What?
Yeah. My Christmas letter every year that my grandpa sends out, it's always like a joke between my siblings and I of like who's gonna make it into the Christmas letter and who has the most space in the Christmas letter. For like 4 consecutive years it says, and Bailey is still doing computer things. That's my signature.
All right,
because it's just like, I know, it's just like surprising to them.
Because your family is like, what's going on? Are you okay?
Yeah, and even my mom's like, I think you should get a real job. I'm like, yeah, I think so too, but actually I don't think so. Yeah. But it's like, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't take your advice.
It's like an ever seesaw.
Yeah, it totally is. And like my dad doesn't know. He's a coach. Like he's retired from coaching. They just named the football field after him.
Coaches are really something else. Like that's
he's done literally the same thing since 1995. He's been in the same school doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. He became the AD, but like literally same schedule pretty much since 1995. Yep, I get which is nearly 30 years.
That's crazy.
Isn't that nuts?
Because that was the year I was born.
I know. 1994 was the year I was born. And he's been doing that ever since then. We had a little full circle moment when we all went back and surprised him when they named the field after him. And it is funny because it's so rooting of like, this is how I grew up. Like this was my childhood, the homecoming and like all of that. Mm-hmm. And then to think about my life in Dallas now, it's a reverse culture shock. That's what my sister and I call it.
100%.
Total reverse culture shock. Yeah. You're like, I'm so appreciative of this small upbringing that like it so much a part still to this day of who I am. But then you're just like, oh my gosh, how even a thing?
How did I do that?
How I don't know.
And how did I feel like that was the whole world, basically? And that's what you think when you're younger.
Were so monumental at the time. And then you're like, man, I really have some perspective.
I'm telling you, like nothing. Like I ended up so I taught high school for 3 years.
And did you do that right after school?
Yeah.
So did you go through a teaching program to get?
No. Okay. I didn't. It was like totally random. I was working with USA Today right after college. That was like my first job. And then journalism sucks because everyone gets laid off all the time. So I got laid off within like 3.5 months. Yeah. And my yearbook teacher from high school had quit. And so my high school principal was like, SOS. Yeah. So I ended up taking that job and getting like an alternate teaching certification. It was like totally on a whim. I didn't expect it. So I did.
In
like
Forney?
Okay. Yeah. So I'm certified as a teacher until like next year, I think.
Right. Is it 5 years? Like a 5-year rotation?
So.
And you just have to do hours?
Yeah. You have to do like continuing education, which I haven't done. So I'm not like renewing it. Right. But that like seeing teenagers experience like these things that are so monumental to them and were once so monumental to you and to me, and like seeing it I wasn't even that much older than the kids I was teaching. Like the 3 years I taught.
4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Like the 3 years I taught, I was 22, 23, 24.
Yeah.
Which is insane to me.
Cultivating years.
Yeah.
To be around children.
But it's like,
I don't know how patient you are, but I substitute taught.
They were high schoolers. So
they're like too cool for you at that point.
Yes.
In a way.
And also bad. Yeah. They're so bad. But I would just see like, oh, wow. The things that like we think are so important. And I would never going to be like the kind of teacher who was like, this won't matter in 3 years. Like it always matters.
Yep.
But you realize how your perspective shifts the older you get, because some of these things they'd worry about, I was like, guys, I promise this actually isn't going to have any impact on your life. Right. But if someone would have told me that when I was 16, I would have been pissed.
Probably give them the middle finger and be like, yeah, right. Kids need to be validated in a way, but how do you validate them without giving energy to something that doesn't need to be energized? Also cultivating and empowering them, and that's children are such an interesting space. Because I feel like I know what that was like for me, and I think that that's why I have a passion, or have passion in seasons of my life to coach, because that has been every cultivating moment that is so powerful to me has come from a coach. And I also grew up with this mindset that I had to outwork everyone to prove everyone wrong, which was already there. Like those building blocks, nobody really gave me those. They were like kind of the innate things in me. And then shameful coaching does something with those.
Oh yeah.
You know? And then it's like, it produces this very like false identity, tough, I'll prove you wrong, I'll outwork you.
100%.
I'm here to show off. Like that whole mentality.
And we all end up as Enneagram 3.
And then we all have to go to therapy and spend lots of money.
Have to go.
Which is like, it's funny. And then I think about whenever I was in college, I have always had a diverse amount of interests. And so it's just like how all these things fit together. We don't know still to this day. But I was working at a training facility under Coach Wiley. And Coach Wiley was a godsend to me in that time. But he coached with such empathy. And one day I was like jumping on vertical boxes that were really high. And he said like one phrase to me that I will like never forget. And he was like, why do you think you can't? Oh. And I was like, and then he gave me a high five when I did it. And that was like my coaching style mindset before shift. Was like, get out of your head. Like, like
do it till you
yeah. You baby. Like it was just so dramatic, really. And even my dad, like reverse psychology, was like, that's fine. Like sit on the end of the bench. Like fine. Or, you know, people who are doing X, Y, or Z are out on the weekends practicing ball handling. Like, sure, sit on the bench. That's fine. Like, and so that stuff all cultivated. And then you have one person in the moment of time that rebuilds all of that for you. So then you went to school, your journalism. So after the 4 years, because you showed up, you're like, is this for me? What was your perspective like after you completed college?
I look back at college now as a person who I'm like, I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I don't think I would change a single thing, single moment, mostly because I'm one of those people who like really believes in the butterfly effect too. So I even think like now if I had the chance to shift the way I did things, like would I? No, I really wouldn't. But I look back on college now and like that era of my life, and I just feel like life gets so much better as you get older. And I know so many people who just miss college and loved it and like would do anything to go back. That is not me. No. I didn't enjoy it that much for like a myriad of reasons. Like my parents got divorced when I was in college. I was going through all sorts of things that you go through when you're 19, 20.
Yeah, and you're moving away from home.
Yeah.
And you're in a space that you're like completely
I'm like, do I actually like this? No.
Yeah. But do I know what I like? Who am I?
But I mean, I met like my two best friends in college. But my perspective when I left was, okay, on to the next. Yep. On to the next. And I try to be an on to the next person. Well, I'm trying to not be such an on to the next person at this moment. But it was anything that I looked back on and thought like, oh, I want to go do that again. I think that like the smallest moment could just like change it all.
Oh, 1000%. It's this minuscule. It's terrifying. And it also, I don't know that it makes you live on edge in a bad way, but it is, I think if you shift your perspective in a moment, things can come into full circle or come to being, and that so much power in the opportunity of that.
Yeah. And I think it's
and not having to control it.
Exactly. And it's also why you just have to be able to kind of like plug into your intuition and make a choice, and you have to be okay with that choice. And you can change the choice.
Yep.
Like, you don't have to stick with the choice forever. You don't have to do the same thing forever. But you can't be a person who looks back on your life and sees all these things that you wish you could do differently. You just have to be able to look forward and say, okay, what can I shift now? But like, if you're not like that, but you end up being a person who's never happy with where you are. And then like, imagine if you had done all those things differently, like your life wouldn't even look the same.
No. And you can also still be in that same headspace that you are. It's all this paradigm thing.
Yeah.
So whenever you taught yearbook, how long did you teach? Did you do that full time? You taught full time?
I taught full time for 3 years, but then like a year in, I started freelance writing and like getting into copywriting, which is what I do now. And like originally my only goal was I just want to make enough to pay my student loan payments with writing stuff, and like try to get another job in like content marketing or something. But then I just kind of built all of the freelance stuff up. And then once COVID hit, I was like, I absolutely hate being a teacher. And I am not about to virtually teach these kids. Like, I taught electives. So it's not like I'm over here teaching. I'm certainly teaching chemistry.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. I was literally teaching yearbook and audio video production.
Right.
So I left teaching. I like turned in my resignation letter in like April of 2020. And it was actually like really the best possible scenario for me, because teachers get paid through August, or like my contract like got me paid through August. So I was able to quit, be pretty much essentially done with work, because that was like at the beginning of all of the COVID stuff when like it was super serious and super scary. And so like all the virtual school stuff, they weren't worried about the audio video production kids. They were worried about like the core subjects, right? So I didn't really have anything to do.
Right.
So I was able to just work on my own stuff, build that up, and like still be getting paid.
Right, through August, which is such a nice little transition. Yeah.
And I have not looked back, and I would not go back.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you.
But you still get the opportunity to do one class of yearbook
I do.
now.
I teach
which
yearbook class now.
Which is probably a nice little...
That's just like a nice little fun
sprinkle.
Like hour a week, like nothing high stakes.
Yep.
I get to hang out with kids, with the Gen Zers. And they're
Learn
so
a
cute.
lot. Keep your lingo up to date.
But yeah, that's as far as I want to stay back in a school ever again.
Yeah. So then you built up your freelance, and is that just how Susie B came to be?
Yeah. I just
Which I love. I hope that you love. Yeah. It just rolls off the tongue.
Susie B.
Susie B. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that's exactly how it came to be.
And that would have been 2020.
Yeah. So my like official first website I published in like January of 2020 when I was still a teacher.
Yep.
And that's when I decided I wanted to call myself like a copywriting studio. I didn't really know what I was doing at that point. It was pretty much just like, let me like put a pretty name on what I'm doing. And that's
landing
just
page.
been,
Legit.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And that's just been stuff that I figured out over the years. But yeah, that's exactly what happened. So I literally started like, oh my gosh, when I was first writing, like my clients were just like the most random things. Like I used to help write blogs for a hunting license company.
Aggies. Perfect.
Like, what is going on here? I used like the weirdest things that I did to just like get my name in the door and just like start learning. And I would do anything I could. Like I wasn't any work.
No.
Anyone, like you could have told me to write a blog post for a couch company and I would have jumped on that so fast.
Right.
So I learned like a bunch of really random things about a bunch of really random businesses. Oh, and there was a grain bagging company. Yeah, like
right in my alley.
Can you imagine anything more interesting than that? Like,
so funny. How did that come across?
Truly exciting. I don't even remember.
Yeah, it just happens.
It did. And now that seems like so far away, like so long ago. And it wasn't really that long ago.
Because of 2020.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the longest 3 years of my life to this point. It seems like.
I know.
Let's talk about the fun opportunities you've had since then.
Yeah.
Because you started with hunting licenses and grain bags. Wow.
Literally like these big bags that you put grain in.
And you were writing the copy for that or for the company?
For the company.
You were writing the label of like what their taglines are.
My grain bag.
My grain bag. Optimal bagging a cord. How did you start coming into that space though? Because as a small business owner, you operate and then you understand and you pivot. So what was that like?
I really feel like I just knew, and I feel like this is not great business advice. I feel like maybe both of us have operated like this. It's like I kind of just knew that everything would work out. Like I knew that I wasn't going to be writing about grain bags forever. No. Like I knew I wasn't. Yeah. And I didn't. Yeah. And so I didn't like market myself that well, but I would like post on Instagram, and I just like started getting some more clients that were a lot more in line with what I wanted to do. And that really came like every time I wrote. Like the biggest struggle with me always in being like in this space and being in like this marketing and writing space is that there's so talented people that like do the same thing, that they want to share this super educational content. They want to teach people how to do this stuff. And I love that for them. But I did never want to do that. Like that wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a teacher. Right. So every time I posted like a story from my own life or like an anecdote that was just like writing that didn't have anything to do with work, that's when I started getting like the people that I wanted to work with. And that's kind of how it's
organically grown. Yeah. And I think that that is a part of brands. I have this challenge in my own space of like, there has been just these highs and lows of kind of reinventing, I guess, to truly find what makes sense to me. And I think that there's a level of insecurity comes with feeling like you've tried to find that space in a way that has kind of caused you to kind of start over in different spaces, but never sustain a growth pattern. And so now it's like on the other side of, like, I've had a business since 2015. Here, almost 10 years later, you're like, have I really grown? Like, have I really done anything? Have I really done work that I'm proud of yet? And I think that there is a level of vulnerability of our humanity that supports the growth that we weren't willing to do before.
I think so too.
And that's why the growth now seems like you're starting over. Because you didn't have what was required to actually connect with people and bring people along.
Because when you start, I feel like you're trying
to something.
Yeah, you're trying to be something, and
that's
you're also
not
like
probably you.
No, and you're trying to follow all these blueprints from other people. And that, I mean, I think that's just human nature. Like there's no way not to do that, really. And it's until you realize like, oh, I don't need to be like a one-dimensional version of someone else. Like that's not what I'm interested in.
No.
And I think that comes from growing up too, because if you would have told me like 3 years ago this, I would have been like, well, actually, I'm pretty sure that I have to like create a copywriting quiz and
I have to
post copywriting help.
This, course that.
And like, I never want to do that. Like I'll help people do it.
Yep.
I don't want to do it.
Right.
And that's been like a struggle with me in business, like over and over again. Like I don't feel like I'm doing it the same way as everyone else. But then I'm like, okay, this last year was probably the hardest, like mentally year I've had in business. Then I was like really kind of looking back on it a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, I have worked with so many like dream people and brands this year. And I didn't have to be someone I wasn't.
No.
To get that.
This whole course educational frenzy, if you will, in the entrepreneurial wow, I cannot say this. Oh my gosh. Space. It's like you want to congratulate them, but you also want to be like, why did you do this to people? Because it's created such a space that makes people feel that that's how they have to do it.
Yeah. And it's funny that you said that, because literally today when I was like sitting in a coffee shop working, I'm working right now on a client's new course that she is launching. She's coming out with, and it's like a how-to course, like an in-depth content course. And then I work with another client of mine who's gotten like super successful from her course, which is like a photography course that she actually teaches people on it. So you have these people who are like actually teaching these like things that only they could teach.
Right.
And then you have these other people in like this other little area of entrepreneurship that are like, let me teach you how to make a course. No.
Yeah.
No.
Let me teach you how to teach someone else to make a course.
There are only specific people in the world that should be teaching others how to do things.
Right.
And like, there are so many of them that are really great at what they do. Like Amy Porterfield, Jasmine Starr, like all these people, they're great. Mel Robbins, like my client, Nicole. Okay, that's about it. Well, that's not about it.
Right. But in your space.
But in like the space that I've been in. And then these other people, I'm like, stop telling people to teach a course, because what you're ending up with is like a bunch of people who are investing in these courses taught by people who have no business teaching a course. No business doing this. And it's because there was like this thing in entrepreneurship like 5 years ago where there were people saying this is like the only way you can make massive money in your business. No.
Passive income.
And it makes everyone feel like they have to be a teachable or like a teaching expert. I think that's what stressed me out so much, because I was like, I don't want to teach anyone how to write copy. Like, I want to write it.
Right.
I don't want to teach anyone how to do it. And I've seen so many people like take their creativity and feel like they need to productize it in a way.
Monetize everything.
And like monetizing your creativity is one thing. Like if you can do that, that's like a dream.
Yeah.
But turning it into a product is a whole other thing.
It's a completely different monster in itself. Mark Cuban said, and I might have to go back and like rework for the exact quote, but in essence, he was just saying, he was like, be cautious of the people who are making money off of teaching instead of actually doing.
Yes.
And he was like, I don't trust that, because if it worked as great as you said it does, you would be out building your empire and like building your company and doing these things.
That's how 100%. And that because all those people do is then end up causing like all sorts of friction and like swirly, all sorts of things. And like the rest of us who are like, wait, am I to be freaking building a course to
all
teach
of a sudden?
people?
Yeah, like, this external pressure and that's the thing that I think it has done. It has removed the value of the craft itself. So why are we, and I think that is a part of the journey I'm on now, even is in this journey of one, being a whole self, being an individual that is grounded and that has a very holistic, I don't know, just like being overall holistic in your life, but then also being an entrepreneur with creative gifts. How does that all function? And how do you preserve the creativity over the money? And I think that it's hard because of once you find a little bit of success, you're like, oh, well, I can have more, or I can do this more efficiently, and then I can gain more margin here. But I think my double-edged sword is that I love business. I enjoy working hard and making money, and I want to be successful. But the minute that is not aligned correctly, you will no longer have creativity, and you will no longer actually have a craft itself. Because the focus becomes the business, the money, the success,
the deliverable,
the product. And now I think that this is a part of that surrender moment for me of just like this being a project and nothing else. This being a creative project of conversation and heart and connection. And it's because of the drive or the appreciation or the desire to know more about business. You literally create a business in every space of your life. Yeah. Well, I like t-shirts. Okay, let's get them ordered. Let's get them designed. Let's get them out the door. Let's start a store. Like there's such a push.
It takes so much of the joy out. And then I think that's what annoys me too about like that. A lot of the entrepreneurship messaging is like, you can turn everything into a business and you can have this most relaxed life. And I'm like, no,
work
it's
less,
easy.
Make more. That is the bane of my existence.
I'm like, cool. This is easy for you.
And it's maybe not. You just portray that it is, or I know. It's
so irritating.
It's so irritating, and I've been screenshotting the things that I'm like, this is not a position I will accept. So like, there's this gal who she does, show it templates, like build your $10,000 a month career, and it's hard because I feel like what she's doing is so incredible, but also it's like setting people up to fail in a way, and she's making a huge dime, but
it's like an MLM.
It 1000% is an MLM. And I think there was a guy at church that spoke, and it was like a TED talk. He's like, I'm not great at speeches, so instead I'm gonna know how to do best. And he illustrated the whole speech. And I have never been so shook in my entire life, because he was a person who his only pursuit was the creativity. His pursuit was the message behind the story. And he was told like he was incompetent and unintelligent, and like he could never pass tests and like all this stuff. And like he's been on covers of publications and magazines, but his pursuit was never anything but the creativity. And so I sat there in the chair, so humbled, literally so like, I feel like I've lost sight of the gift itself.
I felt like that a lot in the last year.
And thank goodness that year gave that to me.
Yeah.
But now what?
I know.
Oh, the answer is I don't know.
I know.
Walking blind of all the things I thought I knew and discovered and was confident in. And then all of a sudden I'm sitting here feeling like I've done nothing. I've accomplished nothing. Like no good work to call back on.
It's almost like, how can you, like, if you're picturing, I don't know, like a bucket, and like 60% of it obviously needs to be like the things that pay your bills and make you to where you're not stressed out about life, and, like jobs. 60% of that needs to be that. But so often, like, creative people try to turn that bucket into 99% of these things. Like we were just talking about. And so it's like, for me, this last year, or this last like 5 months, I've just been writing a newsletter that had nothing.
Which is so incredible, by the way.
Nothing to do. It has nothing to do with making money. Because I had heard so many of the fellow copywriters that I like admire so much, admires like email marketing. You should be writing about copywriting. You should be doing this. And I literally do email marketing for people. That's like part of my job. But I was like, as a copywriter, I don't want to do that. I want to write about, I don't know, the brown butter latte that I got
the things that
this
I
morning.
enjoy in my day-to-day life.
And so I was like, you know what? I actually don't care about writing about copywriting. So start doing this. It's gotten me like 4 clients.
I love it.
That have nothing, that it didn't have anything to do with that. And that wasn't my intention with it. And I actually had a couple of people ask me in the last couple of weeks, like, are you going to turn like paid subscriptions on your newsletter? And I was like, no. Because for me, right now, not even right now. This is how it will always be. It is a creative project. It makes me excited to write it. It has nothing to do with work. Like, if I make money off of it, it's because someone like clicked a link and bought a cookbook I shared. And that's all I want from it. And a year ago, I would have been like, oh my gosh, I need to turn on the paid subscriptions, because everything I do needs to make money. And I think it's like obviously a mildly like privileged thing to say, like, not everything you need to do needs to make money. That's why I said, like, obviously you have to be comfortable. You have to make money that makes your life worth it. But after that, like, the rest of it, like, you can say goodbye to a couple of $100 a month that you could maybe make off a freaking newsletter, maybe to just like enjoy the process.
I think we've lost sight of that, and we think we're giving something up because we don't understand what can be gained. 1000%.
Totally agree. And I think that is the biggest problem with so many like creatives I know. It's like, where are you gonna find a balance between like what pays your bills and like what fills you up? And obviously you want to find like a merge between that. You want what pays your bills like to fill you up too. Like, ideally it should, at least part of it. Like, not every single piece of work you do is ever gonna make you like thrilled, but if the bulk of your work lights you up enough and you have something else that's like a creative outlet, you can literally ask for nothing more. Like, people don't, there are so many people I know, and like other jobs that aren't creative, they're not getting fueled from their jobs at all. Like, creative people are really some of the only people that can like regularly get that fulfillment. But like, when do we say, okay, we're fulfilled enough to not need to turn the next thing into a project?
Hopefully can squeeze every last penny out. I also think that there are spaces for a side gig to be healthy, and I didn't 100%. Think that. When I was side gigging, I'm like, I just wish I could work for myself. Like, everything in corporate world was driving me nuts because of what I was focusing on. And I just think about how side gigging for me was great in the essence that I did enjoy what I was doing full time. It was paying my bills. And then I was able to really dive into the margin in my side gig or whatever that is like. I didn't value in the beginning years, I didn't value it near as much as I came to later. And there's a lot of people that I try to pour into, like my clients and stuff, and just encourage them. I'm like, hey, I know it seems like there's a lot of pressure to go full time, but there is a beauty and a path that you can take that will get you connected to your dream clients faster.
100%.
Because you don't have to sacrifice.
100%. I still have side gigs.
Yeah. Side gigs are great.
I'm fully self-employed for right now. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much longer that'll last.
Right.
But like, we'll see. If I end up taking a full-time job, I'm not giving up.
Right.
I'm not giving up my business.
Right.
Then I'm just going to essentially have like 2 full-time jobs. But all of that to say, like I have my ongoing clients, but I can't ever see a life where I didn't have like some sort of side gig. Like I have 2 of my like corporate clients right now. I could consider like a side gig to my business. I could never see. That's like the thing with entrepreneurs. I feel like all of us have so many side gigs. You can't not.
People are confused by us because it never makes sense.
It never makes sense. Fine. Like the bones
we're
of like,
here to make people wonder.
Yeah. Like the bones of like probably both of our businesses. If you like laid out like how we make money, people are like, that seems like a lot. And you're like, yeah, because it is.
It is. Diversity keeps us going.
That's why we're trying to also do things that don't make us money.
Right. Because you can't have one without the other. And I think that is something that I don't know if it's college. I don't know if it's school. I don't know exactly what type of societal mold pushed us in a direction where we forgot about the whole picture of like, oh, let's go to the 9 to 5 and make this money and come home. And then what? We're just, like we're half of a human being. And there has to be a happy medium for that space of doing something that is worthy of our time, but also from a dollar standpoint, but then being able to invest very deeply and wholly into something that just gives us joy. Mm-hmm. Like, why is that not enough? Yeah. And I think that a part of this whole podcast, like I was telling you, is like the conversations and the production and brings me joy. And why isn't that enough of an answer?
Yeah. Why isn't that enough of an answer? And why don't we just start making it enough of an answer?
Full sentence.
Like, what are things that we can all do legitimately to just be like creative little joy? It has nothing to do with making money. Like I was literally thinking about this yesterday because I really want to take a pottery class.
We love pottery.
That is like something I really want to do this year. And for no reason, I'm not about to start to sell my shitty little mugs that I'm sure I'm going to make.
Yeah.
But I really want to go like get my hands dirty and take a pottery class and like write things that don't have to do with
anything else.
Marketing.
Right.
And do all these things. And it's like, why don't we think more about that kind of stuff?
Right. Creative projects. I love that you say that because I think that is a challenge that we all kind of need to follow in our own way as creatives to understand that in those places that we push the vulnerability, because I feel like sometimes we create a safe space out of, well, if it makes money, then I justify the need to do it. We've lost our whole self in the desire to have money because that was a safe place we created out of justification to do it.
Yep.
Well, how twisted is that? But also, I feel like people need to understand that so that they know that, first of all, it's scary. Anything new or a pivot or having self-awareness and trying to change the behavior is scary. But I truly believe when we create for the pure intention of creating, there's something to be found that is valuable and that we need there, but we can't get it unless we go.
Yeah. Like what happened to hobbies?
Yeah, legit.
Why did we stop having hobbies? Why did we have to make everything a commodity?
And I also think to your point of the success and the display that people put out about their lives or their businesses or whichever, the people we're most attracted to when we learn about them and actually get to know them are the people that have a wholesome approach. Yeah. Not the people that have a lot of money. Not the people. It's that they have something figured out that's above and beyond the societal and like excellence.
What a goal, like in any like aspect of life, like in business or not, like just to be able to be like, they have it figured out, and we can't really see how, but they have it. And that, I don't know if that makes sense, but like just looking at someone and being like, they have some sense of like inner peace or nervous system calmness, and like, they figured that out.
Right. Which I don't know, maybe we'll go pivot into this of where you feel most inspired, but there was just a very clear moment to me when I'm like, I knew that every space and place I've been inspired recently was people who are really good at the actual craft itself. The artists that was their due north, was the creative process and just creating. And I just had that revelation of like, let's get back to just doing good work and actually focusing on that itself. Yeah. Where do you find your inspiration? What does that look like for you?
My inspiration, and I feel like this is different from when I hear a lot of people say that like, don't consume to create, but like I am a consumer, like consuming books, podcasts, the New York Times mini crossword, like all these little things that inspires me in a different way. Travel also inspires me to just like see a different perspective and like try to reflect that. And then also like doing more things that just involve myself and like no one else. That's why living alone has been very good for me, because I'm like, wow, I don't actually have to talk to people 95% of the time, which is what I've been doing my whole life. But those are like the things that inspire me the most, like my own creative process. And then I love seeing people and like learning from and following people who have found that like fulfillment that we were talking about. Like you can tell they obviously are like, okay, sure, I have a business and it's important to me, or I have a job and it's important to me, but like that's not my whole identity, and here's the rest of my identity. And so like so much of the last several months for me has been figuring out like, okay, I have this business, I have these things, but like where's the rest of my identity? Like where am I putting them? Being a friend, in my faith, in the way I take care of myself, and like the books I read, all these things that matters so much more than the work you do on a daily basis. And I don't know where that shift came from. I'm sure that I will have a problem sticking to the shift like everyone does. Like it's very up and down, and I'm sure it will be like that. But like that inspires me in itself. It's like having a life that is not only for being creative or working.
Well, and I think that the identity that carries everything that you do and pour into, that is something that can always be built. But if you build the outwardly things before you build the foundation itself, those things crumble a lot harder.
And that's what so many of us, I've done that before, like countless times probably.
I'm only saying it because I've done it. Like,
it's so true. And I don't know, like I don't know if it's like a getting older thing, or if it's just like a getting more like a secure in yourself thing that you start to figure that out. But I don't know if it's going to therapy that's helped me figure that out. It's probably a good part of it.
Usually helpful.
Like that matters so much. That building up that just like inner like foundation before the other stuff, like before you focus on the other stuff. Oh my God, it makes the biggest difference.
It's huge. It's also huge because I've been reading into and doing a lot of like, whether it's podcasts or just like research, if you will, on what causes survival mode. Because I feel that entrepreneurs get into survival mode before they really even know they're there, or maybe have operated in survival mode.
Operated in it just for years.
Because they feel like that's what's necessary to be successful. And okay, let's follow the lead of the push and the marketing and because all the background coursework or free this, free that is very pressure oriented. Pressure, lack of trust, no safe spaces creates this foundation and this like just whirlwind for survival mode. And all of a sudden we're in survival mode. We didn't know it. And now we were so identified to the survival mode in external ways that we're like, okay, I don't want to be in survival mode anymore. So what does that look like? What does that mean? And you feel like you lose yourself. You feel like you lose every part of what you thought you were confident in, because you're like, all of these external behaviors, all of these things that I was aligning to or saying yes to was out of my desire for chaos, because I thought that I had to be chaotic and like held
and
to the highway,
so plugged in and so
busy, block, whatever, to get the thing that I wanted.
And you thought that's like what people wanted to see.
or what was required the race and to be in the hustle. Like hustle culture is toxic. And so I think that was why I'm like, maybe I do need to get a 9-to-5 job. Maybe that is what I need. Maybe that's what it is. And then through that process, if you've ever been an entrepreneur and then decide, let's go apply for jobs. Hard gnar, man.
I know.
It's terrible.
I know.
It's so terrible.
It's so scary.
It's terrible. And I also think it's that whole like identity crisis you have with yourself. You're like, well, what is everybody gonna think when all of a sudden I'm like, actually no? Or what's gonna happen when you're like, it's this whole thing that the process is so humbling because you're like, none of these external things truly matter. What matters is the person that I am within that, because that's gonna get me to the other side. But also, can I still do this and become healthy if I'm still in this space? Mm-hmm. But the thing that I've found is that in survival mode or out of our programming or whatever, we're looking for something to save us.
Oh, yeah.
So what is that we're looking for? And in different spaces, it's been different things for me. Mm-hmm. But in a way, in the hard places, it's like, oh, I wanted a job to save me from the challenge and the struggle and the lack of confidence and the identity that I'm completely unsure of in a way, but are really positive about certain parts. Then it comes an understanding of like, no external thing is the focus.
Nope.
If a job comes along and I'm like, this is what I need to do, I will do it. If a client comes along and this is what I feel like I need to do, I will do it. Mm-hmm. But it's the understanding of who's carrying you through it all. I think that is important. But we get so caught up in all the external things.
Yeah.
Because we create the story 10 million miles down the road being like, well, if this is, then I'm going to go create the story. And then I'm going to build my life to be in the story. Mm-hmm. But I think as creatives and storytellers, I think that is maybe an inadvertent way of our creativity kind of like being this romanticize your life. And like, it's just a part of our creative brain. But it's how do we pull that back and reel it in so we can steward it better?
Yeah.
How?
Something. Let's see. How? I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. And that's something I've thought so much about recently, and like the survival mode really resonated with me. Like,
not to call anyone out, like, I'm only saying that because I feel like my that's a whole obviously episode worth, but I think that and it's no shame to her. I love my mother. My mother is so gifted and talented, but I just think that there's so many spaces that need to be healed and need to be worked through, and there's very much inner child things that I feel like okay, side note, Tony Robbins, right? I've never really been able to plug into much of his stuff, but I just listened to his episode with Theo Vaughn. I love Theo Vaughn.
I do too.
I love Theo Vaughn. And I will tell you why. Because he has such a story, but he is so emotionally present.
Yeah.
And so surprising.
Oh my God. And also, can I just tell you, this has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but the other guy that is also like on Barstool, Caleb with the blonde hair.
Blonde hair?
Man.
Oh, it's exactly now who you're talking
Caleb,
about.
Caleb, if you somehow listen to this,
he's the
take
guy,
me on a date.
That is so funny. I'm pretty sure, I want to say one time he went on and he was like talking about how he thought he was going to be Luke Combs' manager or something. Is that who that is? Yeah, that's right. He's so funny. And he also is the one that like he plays a character like his content.
Yeah.
Where he's like,
and where he's
brave
like
face.
Yeah.
So and he roasts people.
He's like done them with like Morgan Wallen and like that man has a whole him and Theo Vaughn.
We also could dive into this too about Susie's type because it's an archetype. It's like
it's so consistent. It's like embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
It's so consistent. Like I can't do anything about it. I
actually can't wait to see who you end up with, because the funny thing about my husband is not my type. Yeah. Now he is my type. Now I'm like, I couldn't be into white boys. I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can.
I'm like, am I going to end up with like a 5'4", like super tiny little like nerd? Because that's like, it's not my type.
I know.
So I'm going to be sad. Well, I'm not going to be sad, but
right.
Yeah. Because my like general type is so consistent and has been that consistent since I was like 7.
We're going to test the theory.
Like watched Raise Your Voice, and like my mom was like, the boy in the movie, wasn't he so cute? I was like, the music teacher. And my mom was like, no, girl.
No, actually, that's
and I'm
not
like,
what I
no,
was
John
saying.
Corbett.
Yeah.
That's who I love.
That is so funny.
He's so consistent my entire literal life.
Well, I can't wait to see how that plays out because that's hilarious. Now we got onto that, right, was Theo Vaughn and Tony Robbins. But the only thing I was saying is Tony Robbins, he also, we can give him credit because he grew up educating before it was a thing. And he's built like a career of doing that. But he's done so much research of reworking down to the cellular level of how you think about things and how you operate. And that, I just very much suggest that episode because Theo is coming into his identity. I feel like just who he is, you can see it in his episodes of like, he's very much coming into him.
I want to listen to this,
himself. Yeah. And that episode, I just needed it in the time that I needed it. But it was so important to hear about as beings what we need, and when we're in a rut or negativity, depression, anxiety, what that actually is on a cellular level and the power that we have to change it.
Yeah.
And what that looks like beyond maybe what the options we've been given before and like the paths that we promoted. And it was so good.
And it's like when you think about literally who we are on a cellular level, how often are we actually benefiting ourselves on a cellular level?
Well,
like how often are we being like quiet and calming down and like drinking some water and like taking a breath and closing our computers? Like, because all we're doing is hurting our little cellular.
It's a juxtaposition.
I can't say that word.
Well, I couldn't say entrepreneurial.
Cellular.
I still can't say cellular. And I also think that that's why I like Gary Brecka. I don't
know who that is.
He is not Huberman.
I love my man Huberman.
I know, we love him. But also that's why I think it's so great of now. I think especially like Huberman's content, all he wants to do, he's so interested in the science.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
A true icon.
Right. And I think that that's why we're inspired is because he's focused on the work.
He does what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And has made that his thing.
It's incredible. And so I just think we understand what that's like. We know what that's like on the other side of that. And being able to invest and have that is helpful. But I think it's the grace that we need to walk through it and not have it need to look us way. And I'm very much in the mode of that. So I'm only saying that because
so many of us are, I feel like.
Well, we are. And I also think that once you get to a space where you see people maybe that you knew from afar or had put on a pedestal and you walk with them, you realize
they're in the muck too.
They're no different.
They have been in the muck.
You're no different.
They just have a prettier like rain boot.
He might drive a Bentley.
Yeah.
But there's really not much difference between you and me. Mm-hmm. And I also think that there are things in our mindsets that create the problems versus the actual problems, right? Like giving energy to things that don't need energy. Yeah. That's a large part of it.
Putting way too much focus on money, on being busy, on having our calendars booked.
Right.
Yeah.
So you want to bring into 2024 someone who I feel like it's just center. Like we're just looking for that grounding that I feel like we maybe lost sight of, but also we were just our sight was on other things.
Yeah, and I feel like I've spent so much time trying to like file myself into like straight edges, like that fit every box. And I think there's like, I was listening to a TikTok the other night about like masculine and feminine energy. Right. And I think I've spent so much time like trying to be the busy, like I have things to do, I'm tired, I'm busy, I'm exhausted, I'm stressed, and I'm like, how can I step away from that a little bit and like step back into just like the softer version of myself that I have not seen in a very long time.
Yeah.
Like I don't know where she is. I haven't seen her. She hasn't been around recently.
She's coming.
Like she's coming. She's out a little bit over the last couple months, but it's just like I think getting clear on realizing that this like that overworked version of myself, that's just not who I want to be. I don't want my like busyness, my overwhelm, like I don't want that to be what people know about me. Like I was with one of my best friends a couple of months ago. We were getting ready to do something and I was on the couch like trying so hard to finish some work, and it was like a Friday night at like 8:30, and she was like, are you gonna put your computer up? Like, we have things to do. And I'm like, no, you don't understand.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, why am I like cultivating a life that like makes that cute for me to do? Like, I'm not interested in that being like that being my defining. Like, I have no desire for my lack of like being able to say no being what is going to
actually
define
have
my
a life outside
like,
of
the
progress.
I love what I do, but I only can love what I do if I'm doing other things too,
because you are in fact a whole person. And that's hard when we're creative and we've made money from our creative gifts. Is I feel like my creative gifts started to be very unfamiliar to me. And I think in burnout, they become unfamiliar because you're like, I've done this so many times. Am I even creative? Is this even good work? Am I even aligned with this work? What does this look like? Above all of it, I know that I'm really good at it and I love the people. But like, is the product actually something that isn't just driving my life literally into the ground?
And doesn't like make you, I started to pick up on probably like 6 months ago, I was like doing certain types of work and I was just like, I would get so drained when I was done with it. And then like some of the projects I've done more recently, like I've been like, oh God, it feels so good to just like be doing things that I know that I'm actually supposed to be. It's because I've been able to say no thanks to absolutely overloading myself with other stuff.
What's your favorite project that you've worked on as of late?
Ooh, I have been working on so many projects lately that I have like had so much fun with. Like the course I was talking about earlier, like helping with the marketing content for that has been really fun, just because that's been like more on the salesy side than I usually get to be, and that's been like a fun little way to stretch my brain. My newsletter has been really fun.
I'm a consumer and I love
that.
It. It's almost, see, now I'm also in this space where I'm like, I don't know who that is, so I'm like a little more apprehensive to make decisions. I'm very rash.
I am
naturally too. So I'm like, I think I need to make a Substack. I think
you should you should make a Substack.
I'm sitting on that for a second. But it's been so great out of the essence that it's just it feels that at so many pieces of content I've lost sight of that actually don't invite much in because we've seen it before. And we're so sold to, and so like everything is a sales arm. So when something's not, it's refreshing and I love it coming to my inbox. I read it.
Because the ones I subscribe to, I go, wow, I read this. This is like so valuable to me. And I think also like in December, I worked on the website copywriting for my friend Mello, who is like, she's a brand designer, but kind of like in a more unique way. Like she's focusing on like personal branding, and her website and like her overall messaging is about like not having a job where you are like scared of the Sundays. Like you have scary Sundays all the time. And scary Sundays scaries all the time. And you wake up and you're just like dreading going to work, and like working on that was like a shift for me, honestly. And like the way that I started seeing I started seeing how I was working. So that's probably been like my number one favorite project to work on in like months and months. I had so much fun on that. But
I think that that's such an important point though, because there are spaces when and I don't want to say this in the sense that you have to be perfect in order to grow or have a space that grows you. I think when you're vulnerable enough to be in spaces open to receive what something has for you, you're changed. So,
and like life has
you don't know what that's going to be.
Infinite possibilities for that.
No.
And like when we bury ourselves in that like overworked, sharp little square, we're not open to receive anything,
because it's a protection of ourselves. And I think that is the foundation of survival mode, and also self-protection. They kind of come hand in hand.
And I believe like this is so woo-woo, and I'm not that woo-woo of a person, but I have a little woo-woo. Like I so believe that like the universe reflects that. Like when you're closed off to
it's a complete
opportunities, it's like, okay, well, they won't come. And when you close yourself off, like that's devastating, honestly, when you think about it. And that's what so many of us do.
I also just finished a book in I've already read one book in 2024. Aren't you proud? But it has changed my whole life, because it's about the mindset and about the blueprint in which you operate. And subconsciously, we operate with the blueprint that we've been given, conditioned, either verbally or by modeling. And so when you think about that, it's that we are more susceptible to survival mode and chaos to which we've been given that opportunity to be conditioned, modeled. And so we're in a kind of a reckoning And I feel like I've felt such a breath of fresh air and like such on the up and up ever since the second, just this week. And so
just like until now.
And I just think it's like with open arms a little bit. It's like we're all discovering something different.
Yeah.
And we've laid a lot down. But it's just is the more we can talk about the creativity and why it's important, I feel like the more we can stay committed to it.
Yeah, I think
that that's why it's important.
And I think that also, like, people try to say that like creativity has to be like you're a good painter, you're a good designer, you're a good writer, but like really all creativity is like how can I look at the world that is in front of me and think about it in a different way.
Mm-hmm. And I completely agree. Everyone is creative. I believe that to my core.
I do too.
I think the execution just looks unique to your purpose and why you were put here on this earth. I think
and
it's
it doesn't have to be
unique.
pretty.
It doesn't. Like, I also think that creativity is an extreme challenge and something that I'm like, I do not fit any mold. I fit no mold. And I think that that is a part of the friction you were talking about, the friction in my own life, is that one, other people don't understand it quite, right? So there's like this other exterior expectation, whether it's like family dynamics or society or whatever kind of little tribe that you have, because it doesn't make sense. It's Bailey's off her rocker. She's a rebel. Rebellion. That's my mom's favorite word. Live in rebellion. And I joke about that. And that's why my first brand was called Be Wildly You, because I was the wild child, like firstborn redhead. Like that was an identity that I was given. And I thought that I was, but then it hurt me on the inside because I'm not wild. I'm literally I'm just doing the best I can. I'm working it out. Like, I think a part of me and my unique, like, whatever wiring God put in here, it really has to be worked out, and it has to be like kneaded and rolled and cut and just that's a part of it. And so for me in this season 2, I'm like, I don't even know what it is for me anymore. Like, it used to be my brand design, but whenever I was in college, I was like, I do not want to be a designer. Do not sit me in front of the computer. My first job, I was a designer full time, and I was like, this is hell. You sit me in a computer and put me in one room. I'm like miserable. So then I'm like, go do marketing jobs and in leadership. I love people, but I just really like to be in charge. But is that really what I'm good at? Like, yes and no, right? And so now I'm in this space. I'm like, I think it's everything.
Yeah. I think it's everything.
It's just funny because I have so many interests, and I hate the term master. What is that? You know what I'm trying to say? Master of none. Something. Master of none.
Master of whatever. What is that? None. Something
Jack
like
of all trades. Master of none. I hate that.
I do think it's a lie.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I have this, I don't know if it's a bag or like whatever, but it's like I've picked up all these things and put it into my bag along the way. And I think I tried to throw some of them out too soon. And I forfeited some things too soon based on the expectation of what I felt like I should get in a certain amount of time, or how it should look in a certain amount of time, or whatever. And then I'm like, oh, that's not my thing. It's not, either no one else has validated it in the way I wanted it to be validated, or I didn't get good enough at it in a certain, so that must not be my thing.
Yeah.
Not natural at it, whatever.
Yeah.
So this whole risk junkie thing is like, how many times can we be vulnerable enough to face it time and time again, no matter what it looks like, no matter what we get out of it? But are we willing? And that's risky. I just think it's risky in every form of the word.
I do too.
So in the same regard of like being a wild child, redhead, whatever, it's like, this is the phrase that I've coined because it means a lot to me.
Yeah.
But I also think it has value in the sense of, I hope that our generation and generations after and before us are more okay with it.
I do too.
And we step into it.
Yeah.
And we create a new space that has not been created. And the molds that we hate and that disgust us
don't have to be there anymore.
We don't have to live in that space. We don't have to pull a chair up to that table, right? So I'm excited in the essence that we can breathe into this, just because it's something I literally have been, I've been sitting on it for a very long time. And then as life happens and struggle and, you know, whatever, you're just like, oh no.
Yep.
I'm not perfect enough to talk about this stuff, or whatever you create in your mind.
Yeah.
And so it's so fun. And I don't know who I'm going to be in 2024. I have not that figured out. But what I have figured out, that I think creativity is our weapon to what our true identities are.
I think so too.
We're on the journey.
Look at us.
Wow.
Look at us.
You turned 30.
A year and a half.
Okay. I turned 30 next month.
Because I turn 29 next month.
Okay. And then February, baby?
Yeah. February 21st.
I knew this.
Yeah. What's your 19th?
Sorry, 17th.
17th. So we're just 4 days apart. And February girls.
Oh my gosh, this is great. This is so amazing. I can't wait. I think that the best thing about this year is just going to be the things that we were open enough to receive that we didn't know were coming.
Yeah. That should be like a goal. Like,
that should be it, right? How can we
just be open?
How can we be okay? And also, how can we live a life that's driven by our identities and not by anything else? Like, the pureness of how we were created and all of its goodness, like how can that be the drive and nothing else? And I just think that sometimes that's very humbling because we have to go into very, maybe not isolated, but very like restricted places so that none of the external has the space it had before. It's like we have to minimize, I feel like, to regrow. And sometimes those spaces are very risky and don't always feel the best, but inspired, where can we offer up some either content, or I know you love to read, some books, anything that would be inspirational to someone maybe?
Oh yeah. So I have been very inspired by who you introduced me to, Maggie.
We love
Maggie Sellers.
We love her so much.
I'm obsessed with her.
She's awesome.
Yeah, I've been like toying with the idea of doing like adding like a second segment to my newsletter that's like having like talking since Tuesday and then having like a talking on Thursday where I like interview people basically, like
so fun.
Written like interviews.
Q&A.
And I want her to be like my first.
So I want to say she came on the house guest with it, which is
Kenzie
I saw
Elizabeth. That, but I don't think it's been published yet.
No, I don't so either because she interacts with her content in a great way. So her newsletter has a TikTok that's linked on the bottom. And
did I tell you I won a giveaway?
Did you really?
From her newsletter? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome.
I just won the Dissois giveaway.
What is that?
It's this like non-alcoholic.
Oh, so great.
Sparkling adaptogenic beverages that she invests in. And I just got the package this weekend.
Okay, that's so awesome.
So good. But
that's awesome.
She's such a badass.
Yeah.
I love her.
And honestly, it's like, I don't know how you would keep them all straight, but we were chatting about Pilates in the DMs once. And I was like, well, if you ever come to Dallas, like it's a great place. So then she came to Dallas and went to a Cowboys game and stuff. And I was like, man, we love that. Close but far. Maybe next time she comes.
I love Maggie.
She's so great.
She's my favorite. And she's so inspiring.
She very much is. And one of her predictions was that in 2024, there will be more validity in people who have a craft and not just a platform.
Yep.
So it's like the platform will be elevated because of the craft.
I agree with that.
And I think that's where it's going because people are getting, everything is loud. Like with the influencer culture and all of that, it's just, it's very, very loud. But I think if we dig our heels in, we'll find our own success in that. And it's not going to look like everyone else's, but and
that's fine.
But that's completely okay.
Yeah.
I love her. I think she also kind of opened up this space in my mind because of my desire for business and investing in people and just all of that. I want to be an investor one day.
Yeah.
And I think that because of her content, it made me...
It feels more...
concrete, reachable. Right?
Yeah.
Because one of the biggest probably problem in my business, and you'll come to find in the same way that you were saying, is like as you start to work with people that you've put on a pedestal, the more people you work with, the more you realize the 1% exists in every category. So in small business, it's like, well, first our perspective is, oh, well, I just want to run my own business. Well, then you get there and you're like, nobody's really doing a good job at this. And the people who are doing a good job at this, either it seems like it's an oversaturated market or they're so far that way that it's like the valley seems so deep in between that we're like, okay, whoa.
Yeah.
And so I love business and building that. It's very easy to me. I can see the path so clearly. The issue has been the people to which are building it.
Yep.
And so I have yet to come into an opportunity or a space that I'm so aligned with the ability and the capacity of a founder that I'm like, okay, instead of you paying me tens of thousands of dollars to do X, Y, or Z, I will become an equity partner. But I haven't come across the right space.
She has such a cool portfolio of people she's found.
I know. Where can people find you? How can we connect with you?
You can follow me on Instagram at Susie B Hutch. And my TikTok is Susie B Hutch _
I know, right? The username
which
thing.
is so annoying. And then my newsletter is Talking Since Tuesday on Substack.
Which is so great. I love it so much.
I love it. I really do. It's my favorite thing I do.
I love it also. It's so incredible. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. And this is a blast.
This was so fun.
So fun. Well, I love you. I'm so glad you're here.
I love you too.
Cheers.
Cheers. Look at us. We did it.